Well, hey, Great Lakes Church Online Campus, I'm so excited to be with you today. Things look a little bit different for the very first time. We've been working pretty hard over the last couple weeks to create a new online studio. And so every week you're going to be seeing the talk from right here. And I hope this creates just more of a personal connection as we connect with you at home or wherever you're watching from. If we haven't met before, my name is Newman, but most people around here just call me Brit. I serve on staff as our high school director, our groups coordinator, and I also take a lot of photos for the church. So if you've ever served with us, or maybe you've popped in at a different event, maybe we would have met through there. I am married to Garrett, and we live in Winthrop Harbor, Illinois, and we are expecting our first son, Levi, this October. And you know, pregnancy, you get a lot of weird questions, a lot of weird questions. And so I'm just going to go ahead and answer some of those questions for you. I feel pretty good. My feet are not swollen yet. I'm still sleeping through the night. The only thing I'm craving all the time is carbs. Like, I definitely eat 2 bagels a day. So if you want to drop off bagels this week, you know who would be a happy recipient of those. And so I'm just so excited to be with you guys today. Now, the last few weeks we've been in this series we're calling Summer School, and the whole premise of this series is different how-to statements where we really take this truth that when we stop learning, we stop growing. So I want to take you guys back to 1995, and at the time I was freshly enrolled in my first preschool class, and my mom was working as a snowplow driver. She was in active recovery through AA, serving at Meals on Wheels, and this whole time all she wanted to do was make a bigger difference. But she didn't really know where to start or what to do. And then one day, she was sitting in this Kiwanis meeting where somebody started talking about their role as Zion Township Supervisor, really a position dedicated to helping people. And my mom will tell you for the very first time, she just felt this lump in her throat that she knew she had to go for this position. Now, the only problem with that is we come from a family of politics, and so political parties have just been basically our entire life. And my mom swore that she would never, ever, ever step into politics. And so my mom decided, I'm going to go for this position one time. So she ran. She lost by 6 votes. Like 6 people overslept that day, rushed to work, didn't make it in time to vote. And because of that, her experience was delayed. And we didn't know at that time that throughout the next 4 years, my parents would walk through a divorce, and my mom would have to learn what it meant to parent 2 kids and what this might actually look like. And so she swore, I'm never running again. Absolutely not. And then one day, a friend knocked on the door, and she said, all right, gig's up. What do you got to do to win this thing? So that day, my mom made a decision to run one more time, and to this day, she has been in that elected office for 20 years. And I don't know about you, but at least it seems like in my life, the very things that we say we'll never do are the things that we actually end up doing. Just like my mom was like, I will never step into politics. And guess what? That's exactly what she ended up doing. And I know at least for me, this is very, very true. In fact, I've kind of made a joke of it in a lot of ways. I've always said that I think the minute I say I'm never going to do something, this alarm goes off that looks a little bit like this. And I end up doing the very thing I said I would never do. For example, let me give you some practical examples. I moved away in 2010. I moved from Illinois to Mississippi, and I swore I was never moving back to Illinois. It was cold. Everyone's a Bears fan. And I just couldn't understand why anybody would even want to live here. Like, what do you do? It's freezing 9 months out of the year. Joke's on me, right? Because in 2019, I moved back to my hometown in Illinois, and it's been wonderful. And then 4 years ago, this is probably my favorite one, I said, I will never work in a church. Honestly, I just thought church was filled with a bunch of weirdos. And I don't know if you've ever, met Dave in person, but I actually do think that's a little bit true. He's a little bit weird, but it's been an absolutely incredible experience working for Great Lakes Church. And so sometimes I think it's fair to say that the things we say we're never going to do are the exact thing that God asks us to do. And so I want to take you guys to a story today that's found in 2 Kings chapter 4. Now, before we dive in, I want to ask you a question. I want you to just take a second and reflect on your life and ask yourself, where have you stopped dreaming? Where have you just stopped really growing in? What in your life just seems it had this great purpose, but now you're really not sure what's going on with it? Where in your life have your dreams died? Maybe you had dreams of being further along in your career by now, but promotion after promotion, they just seem to pass you up. Maybe you had dreams of being married by now, but first date after first date, you're starting to wonder if it will ever happen for you. Or maybe you had dreams of starting a family by now, but that battle with infertility just seems to never end. Your dreams, they could even be for someone else, a child or a parent who seems to keep putting themselves in painful situations. And you're constantly left wondering, will they ever get the help they need? See, where in your life have your dreams died? So as I said, we're looking at a story today found in 2 Kings chapter 4. And we're talking about this idea of how do we dream again? How do we dig down deep, look past complacency that so easily paralyzes us and move forward with the things God has called us to do? But I want to give you some context. So here's what's going on. Our Bible is made up of really two parts. We've got the Old Testament and we've got the New Testament. The Old Testament is everything that's happened before Jesus comes, and the New Testament is everything that happens after Jesus comes. And so our story today is found in the Old Testament about a prophet named Elisha. So just for clarification, a prophet at this time was someone inspired to deliver a message. And Elisha's ministry was filled with signs and miracles. In the end, he was primarily known to be the messenger of peace and healing. So as we pick up in 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 1, here's what we read. The wife of a man from the company of the prophets cried out to Elisha, "Your servant, my husband, is dead. You know that he revered the Lord. But now his creditor is coming to take my 2 boys as his slaves." All right, so I love things broken down into the simplest terms possible. So I want to let you know what's going on in this moment. This woman has just lost her husband, who spent his entire life loving and serving God. Not only has she lost him, but she's also under a ton of financial stress and is at risk of losing her 2 sons. At that time, this would be equivalent to her protection and her stability as well. And so maybe you haven't physically lost a loved one, but I think we can all find something in our lives that died that we lost, whether it's a relationship, a dream, a friendship, a job, something that simply just didn't go the way we imagined it would. And just like this woman, we're left under an enormous amount of stress with our stability and protection at risk. And so as this story begins, we hear this woman finally break and all her emotions come pouring out. She's grieving, she's scared, she feels hopeless, she's feeling desperate. And at this moment, I really want Elisha to respond by saving her from her pain. I just want him to take her and hold her and say, hey, don't worry about the money. We're going to get you all taken care of. We're going to get you back on your feet, and then I'll just make my way out of here, and it'll all be great. But Elisha doesn't do that. Let's take a look at verse 2. Here's what he says. Elisha replied to her, "How can I help you? Tell me, what do you have in your house?" She responds, "Your servant has nothing here at all, except a small jar of oil." So let's be honest for a second. If I was this woman, I'd probably tell Elijah, didn't I just tell you everything that's going wrong? My husband's dead. They're coming to take my boys. I got no money. But Elisha's question isn't necessarily a question of circumstance, it's a question of vision. He's saying, what is it that you need me to do? So if you're taking notes today on your smartphone or your dumb phone or your journal, wherever you're taking notes at, I want you to write this first point down. God gives provision where there is vision. The trap that so many of us get caught up in is that since we don't really know where or what we're asking God to do, we're constantly missing it when he moves in our life. So what is it that you want? What is it when the chaos settles and your eyes close? They can't seem to get out of your head. What is it that you want God to do in your life? The second question Elijah asks is, what do you have? I love this question because this is a question of inventory. And it's wildly important that we get the order of these questions right, because what happens is if we answer what we want based on what we already have, we will only cast vision for the things that are already in our control. So Elisha asks her, what do you have? And this woman, like many of us often do, almost misses her opportunity to see what God will do with the little bit that she has. And at any time in our life, we can find ourselves really with different levels of fulfillment in our life. And so maybe right now, everything is going really, really good. Despite COVID, your business, they did really well this year. Your family is healthy. You're in good health. Life couldn't be better if you're really honest. Everything is really great. It's a good place to be. There's nothing wrong with this. Or maybe you're in a different season and your jar's about half full. Things aren't great. Things aren't terrible. You're just somewhere right in between. But maybe you're like this woman and you say, I got nothing left. I'm exhausted. I'm broken. I'm broke. I'm tired. I'm lonely. When it comes to the jar of my life, I'm with this woman. I've got nothing except this little bit of oil. And in this season, we might sound a little bit more like this. Jesus, I've got nothing except this hope to care for foster children. Jesus, I have nothing except my ability to play piano. Jesus, I have nothing except a desire to tell stories. Jesus, I have nothing except a love for building things. Jesus, I have nothing except a habit for creating spreadsheets. Jesus, I have nothing except this little bit of oil. And when we find ourselves in this space, it's really important that we don't count out what God is counting on. Write that second point out. Don't count out what God is counting on. And this might mean you need to go and take some inventory of your life. You might need to go in the attic of your mind and pull out those gifts and talents and dreams and visions that you once had that have died. Maybe you've stored them away because someone thought it was stupid or impractical. But deep down, I'm convinced that the things we've counted out haven't disappeared. They're just discouraged. They need someone to knock on the door, to interrupt our discouragement and ask, what is it that you need to do? What do you want? And what do you have? As we pick up in 2 Kings verses 3 and 4, Elisha tells this woman, go around and ask all your neighbors for empty jars. Don't just ask for a few. Then go inside and shut the door behind you and your sons. Pour oil into all the jars, and as each is filled, put it to one side. Can I just tell you how freeing this verse is? Because I don't know what it is in our human nature, whether it's pride or fear, but for whatever reason, it feels like we have this preconceived notion that if we're going to do what God has called us to do, we have to do it alone. And more often than not, this is why we're so quickly paralyzed in the process, because we don't know where to go or how to start. And so Elisha tells this woman, go ask your neighbors for empty jars. You know, the people that you live next door to, that you see at work, that every time you see them and they ask, hey, how you doing? You're like, oh, I'm good. We're good. I don't need anything. Everything's great. Go to those people. Go to those people that don't think you're struggling, that perceive you have it all together. Go to those people and ask for more jars. Get wisdom, get counsel, get insight, get systems, get whatever jars you need, then go and pour your own oil into it. So 4 years ago, when I made the decision to really start living out my faith, I had no idea where to start. I mean, there's so many books, there's so many studies, there's just so much of everything. Where do you even start? So I started looking around for someone who could help me learn. And I made it a point to meet with women who were older than me and wiser than me until I found someone whose walk with Jesus I desired to have. And in January of 2018, I crossed paths with a woman named Carol in the lobby after church. And despite her recent cancer diagnosis, she invited me over for homemade cookies and tea. For the next 2 years, throughout chemo treatments and doctor's appointments, every Saturday morning she'd sit with me, talk about the rhythms I was building and the things that I was learning. Looking back, I can see she was just giving me jars that required my own oil. And it's safe to say, write this third point down, that expectation without preparation is going to equal frustration. When we have these expectations of what our life is going to be, but we don't actually prepare for it, we're just going to get frustrated in the process. So we have to be willing to go outside of ourselves and get the help that we need. What is it that you need to do? What person do you need to meet with? What book do you need to read? What class do you need to enroll in? What podcast do you need to listen to that someone sent you 3 months ago? Maybe that's just me. What empty jar do you need to borrow? In 2 Kings 4, verses 5 and 6, here's what we read. She left him and shut the door behind her and her sons. They brought the jars to her, and she kept pouring. And when all the jars were full, she said to her sons, "Bring me another one." But he replied, "There is not a jar left." Then the oil stopped flowing. Here's what I find so interesting about this passage. Elisha didn't tell the woman how many jars to grab. Whether she thought she needed 5 or 500, what she set out for was completely up to her. And the truth is, you can write this next point down, God will often pour into what you prepare. And there are seasons where you literally have to shut the door and pour, where we have to rid ourselves of being too busy and too distracted so we can do the work God has called us to do. Our next verse reads that she went and told the man of God, and he said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debts. You and your sons can live on what's left." I've always considered this word live to be wildly important when it comes to this text. Because Elisha doesn't say survive on what's left. He says go and live on what you have left. And many of us, myself included, tend to associate God with this scarcity mentality. We don't want to ask him for anything because we don't want to be a burden to him. We don't want to pray when our hearts are shattered because we feel guilty that we didn't pray sooner. As if when we go to him, we're putting him out. But what the scripture implies is that there's more to the story. In John 10:10, Jesus says, "I have come that they may have life and have it to the fullest." Not that they would merely survive, but that throughout their time on earth, they would actually live. And here's what's really cool. When we choose to bring whatever we have to Jesus. Because if you're the person where your life is really, really full and you bring it to Jesus, there's so much more in the jar. But then maybe you're the person who things are okay. Not great, not terrible, just somewhere in between. But you make a decision to bring it to Jesus. And now we have even more in the jar. But maybe you're this person. Maybe you're this person that says, I've got literally nothing left. But when we bring it to Jesus, we find ourselves with even more in the jar. And what's so cool about our walk with the Lord is that this is now the resources we're able to tap into. And when we tap into this, we'll recognize that his jar is always full. He's always got exactly what we need. So when it comes to answering this question of how do we dream again, we've got to start with this simple question of, well, what is it that you want? And what is it that you have? What jars do you need to set out? What are you asking God to do? See, I'm convinced that God wants to do amazing things in us and through us while we're here on earth. The question then becomes, are we willing to push past those barriers of doubt and discouragement and pride and fear that so often hold us back from being a part of something great that he's doing right now in our lives? And maybe this is all new to you. Maybe you just clicked on this because your friend sent it to you and you're actually going boating tomorrow, and so you really didn't know what to do, so you're like, I'll just get a little bit of Jesus in today. Whatever brought you here, can I just tell you that life is better when we access a full glass. So my question for you today is, what do you want? What do you have? What jars do you need to set out? And are you willing to give to Jesus so you can access something so much greater than you could have ever imagined? Thanks so much for hanging out with us today, guys. I hope you've had an awesome 4th of July weekend, and we hope to see you back here next week. Thanks for hanging out, guys.